All right, so it looks like we are live. What's up, Action Tribe? AJ here, host and founder of My Seven Chakras, my7chakras.com, the place where we help you experience effortless healing, awakening, and abundance. In today's episode, which by the way is a special episode, we're going to explore some powerful topics like the importance of breathing consciously, how our breathing influences our physiology, the spirituality of breathing, and how controlling your breath can actually transform your life and make you live longer. So, if you'd like to explore these topics in your car or at your home, then make sure that you hit the subscribe button because that'll do some magic in the algorithm world so that people who might not notice our podcast will end up seeing this episode. And if you'd like to join our official Facebook group as well, then make sure that you go to my7chakras.com/tribe, my7chakras.com/tribe. With that being said, our guest for today is the one and only Dan Brulé. Dan Brulé is a modern day teacher, healer, and world renowned pioneer in the art and science of breathwork. He is one of the creators of breath therapy, and he was among the original group of internationally certified rebirthers. He's a master of Prana Yoga and Qigong, Chinese medical breathing exercises, and he leads the worldwide spiritual breathing movement. He coaches, trains, and certifies professional breathworkers, and since 1970, he has traveled to 67 countries and has trained more than 250,000 people to use their breath and breathing for personal growth, professional development, peak performance, self healing, and spiritual awakening. And by the way, Tony Robbins wrote a foreword for Dan Brulé's book. So you can imagine the type of content and the type of information and wisdom that we're going to get in today's episode. And by the way, in case you didn't know, this is the third appearance of Dan Brulé on our podcast. And the last time we connected was somewhere in 2018. So, Dan, super excited to have you on our show. How's it going?
Well, wonderful. As I said, if things were going any better, I'd have to be twins. I almost feel a little bit guilty during this shutdown, during this Corona craziness. For us, it's been just this amazing, unplanned, unexpected opportunity to really pause, to really stop, to dig in. And it's resulted in a lot of creative juices flowing. And God, I've been busier than ever. And meanwhile, so many people in the world are really suffering and really struggling. And so my heart goes out to people. And so, what we do what we can. We make the best of every situation. And sometimes something that we think is something really negative turns out to be a blessing, a gift. And that's what's happening for us, at least in our corner of the world, around this whole crazy shutdown thing.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's been a hard time for a lot of people around the world, especially in terms of divisiveness. You have people on both sides, and there's a lot of anxiety, stress as well. But I think your services and your support are even more needed right now as you very profoundly teach people how to breathe correctly and properly and well. So I think it's a very opportune moment, like you've alluded to. Uh, for this interview, I was hoping to start from the very beginning. Maybe if you could tell us where did you grow up and what was life as a kid for Dan?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I was the kid who in the schoolyard was organizing all the breath holding competitions. I can remember we'd play with hyperventilating and then like squeeze each other and almost pass out and just playing with the breath. Since I was raised in New Bedford, Massachusetts, which is where Moby Dick, and there was a whaling capital of the world. Catholic school, factory, industry town, garment factory, textile mills. The Acushnet River was right next to us. So a very old American Indian tradition in that part of the world. And so the energy is really beautiful in the forests and along the ocean there. But yeah, I got turned on to the breath as a little Catholic boy in kindergarten, hearing about how God breathed into the nostrils of man the breath of life, and man became a living soul. And I don't know, it just hearing that as a little 5-year-old kid, it just, I don't know, it lit something up in me. And I've just been a missionary for the breath ever since. And every job I've ever had has kept taking me back to the breath in one way or another, until it's the only thing I've really done now for the last 40 years has been a missionary for the breath. So, and it's, 40, 50 years ago, I felt like a voice crying out in the desert. People go, breathing? What's that? Breathing. Ah. And so now it's great that the science is caught up, and we have understanding on why some of the ancient yogic practices and Taoist practices and why they work, and what's involved in them. And so I love that science and spirit meet, and the breath is exactly a perfect place where science and spirituality can meet.
Wonderful. So I love that you drew inspiration from texts in the Bible about how God breathed life into man, and you were doing these breathing practices with your friends, and obviously you lived in a place that has access to nature as well. So, did you ever have any mystical or spiritual experiences as a kid? Something that you can remember?
Oh yeah, and from the very early on, just when you start to play with the breath,
Right.
whether you mean to or not, you begin to stumble over things, accidentally bump into things, bring stuff up, access things,
Right.
and the more you focus on your breath, the more you focus on your body, your feelings, your emotions, your energy. And so, without realizing it, it launched me into a practice of mindfulness before it was called mindfulness or meditative awareness. Kriya yoga, Kundalini yoga, Shakti yoga, Prana yoga, just accidentally stumbling along, and really around 11 years old, I think was my first real major ecstatic sort of breakthrough, you could say. I transcended my normal consciousness. I entered into some kind of communion with my source, this ocean of love around us, the energy of existence. And, how do we talk about it? God, like a biological experience of God, a cellular experience of divine energy. Just as a child, just playing, really. But it got really serious at one point, because felt like I was being called in a direction where the kids around me weren't, and even my teachers and the nuns in Catholic school, they weren't they weren't getting something that I
Hmm.
started to feel was really important. And it came to a crux. It came to a peak in the 6th grade. I was 11 years old. And, I wrote an article years about this called boobs and baseball, which are the two things that 11-year-old boys, when I was 11, that's all we cared about was boobs and baseball. And, uh, and so I had kind of a combination of a closing off to what everybody else was into and what they were trying to suck me into. Like, one part of it was putting up a wall against that, and the other was digging deeper into something that nobody else around me seemed to be interested in or cared about.
Hmm.
Um, and that was, who am I? Because I have these recurring dreams, and I had this experience, kind of a surreal kind of fantasy experience, where I imagined that I could have been a black child born in Africa.
Hmm.
And so I was looking through a copy of National Geographic magazine, and I found this image of these little African boys, and they were all about my age, around 10, 11 years old or so. And they all had a stick in their hand, and there was a coconut on the ground.
Yeah.
And they were like frozen in the air, and the dust in the air, and they're frozen with their stick. And at that time, I had my baseball bat and my baseball. And I looked at that picture of these African kids with the stick and the coconut. And I looked at my baseball bat and my ball, and I started thinking, wow, I could have been born in Africa. And instead of having a baseball bat and a baseball, I'd be playing with a stick and a coconut. And
Right.
I'd be eating whatever they eat, bugs. I thought little African kids ate bugs. And
Mhm.
I'd be believing whatever they believed, and I'd be learning whatever they're learning, and doing whatever they do. But instead, I was born in a different place, in a different religion, in a different country. And I was learning different things. And I had a different name, and I was playing different games. But I started to realize, wait a minute, I could have been born in Africa. I could have been born 100 years ago. I could have been born 100 years in the future. I could have been born a Jew instead of a Catholic. I could have been born a girl instead of a boy. And
Mm.
so these questions were leading me to, who am I under these surface, almost coincidental, accidental? I happen to be born into this family. I could have been born into another family. And so, but who am I at this deeper level? And I didn't have anybody to talk to about that. People just roll their eyes back of their head and said, "Oh, let's look at boobs and let's talk about baseball," or, And so I was kind of forced onto my own path alone in a way.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until many years later that the breathwork world kind of really awakened. The modern breathwork world really originated with Leonard Orr and the rebirthing movement. And um, and the idea, and it really caught me immediately, because Leonard Orr's definition or idea about rebirthing breathwork was the merging of the outer breath, which is air, and the inner breath, which is spirit. And so and so then I had a technology, kind of a spiritual technology for awakening
Mm.
through the path of breathwork. And so I made breath mastery my path, because I realized in the process of mastering my breath, I have to master my mind. I have to master my emotions. I have to master my body. And so by following this one thread of the breath, it took me into everything that I needed. And it's become a guide and a teacher and a partner, the breath itself. And so that's my path. And I'm looking forward to the next adventure, because they keep coming.
Wonderful, wonderful. And, the experience that you shared was truly a transcendent experience, even as a kid of 11 years old,
Mhm.
to have this understanding that you could have literally been born anywhere at any time, almost like a time traveler, so to speak, jumping from one meat bag to the other. Uh, but it's fascinating that you had this question in your mind about who truly am I, and you didn't have the answers from people around you. And recently, a couple of weeks back, I go daydreaming, and I was staring at the buildings, and I realized that I might be growing old, but the one who is witnessing these thoughts and this consciousness and this unfolding, that person is timeless and transcendent. Sometimes we have these microsecond realizations that I feel grateful for. But what you shared is so profound, and so that sort of took you on this journey. I've got a quick question in between
Mhm.
before we move on to the next. But as you can imagine, our parents play a key role, especially during the formative years of our journey as human beings. So, what sort of influence did your parents have on you?
I was very blessed, very fortunate, in two ways, with both my mother and my father. My mother was just, unconditionally loving.
Mm.
Um, just supported me in whatever I ever thought to do, never really shoved anything down my throat, never made me be any certain way, except what she would consider to be good and loving and kind and compassionate, just normal virtues that you would like any child to develop, but nothing specific. And so it was a real sense of freedom. And she even verbalized that I was in a teenage time, and like all teenagers, I was into crazy stuff. And I always thought, it's best if I protect my mother from my adventures. She doesn't need to know everything that I'm doing and what. Uh, but when the police get involved, then your parents are involved, and so I was involved in a big scandal, and I was a hooligan, in many levels. And the police, delivered me home in the middle of the night, and it was a kind of a thing. And I didn't know how to talk about what I had just got arrested for. And she just sat very quietly, but I just still couldn't, and I couldn't talk. And so finally she said, "Look, Danny," she's one of the few people called me Danny. "I don't care what you did. I don't care you rob a bank, you killed somebody. I don't care. I love you. You can always come home." That was like permission for me to like go anywhere and do anything. And I could always come home. I knew that love would always be waiting no matter what I became. And that gave me kind of a freedom, I think. And my father was actually my stepfather. My mother divorced when I was 3 years old. And so the man that I always think of as my father is actually my stepfather. I did have a relationship with my biological father. He was an alcoholic and not a good role model. So I'm really happy that my mother gave me a better role model in terms of a father. And so my father, Joshua, was into nature and into music. And he was always in the woods and fishing and hunting and, archery and sports. And he was just a great outdoor nature person. And he was really into music, barbershop quartet music and harmony. He was always singing. He was always humming. And when I turned 18 and I could take my first legal drink, he took me to a bar and I had my first legal beer with my father. And he said something really quite beautiful. I told him, I said, "Dad, you really never put any pressure on me. The only thing I ever remember you making sure I did was respect my mother. Other than that, you've always given me this great freedom." And he said, "Well, actually, because I never thought that I was your real father and it wasn't my place." And so he had his own interesting reason, but he also gave me a palpable sense of freedom that I could be anything and go anywhere. And I don't know if everybody has that. I think a lot of people are kind of forced to do the family work or to follow some path or to be this, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever. And somehow I escaped all that and I was able to find my own path, which I don't think many people are really blessed to be able to do. They wake up in the last few minutes of their life and they realize, "Oh my God, this isn't why I was here." And so thank God that moment came to me sooner. Why am I here? Who am I? Where did I come from? And those big questions in life, my family, my mother and father really allowed me to find my own answers. And that's, I think, a gift that's still nourishing me today.
Beautiful. I think one of the greatest gifts a parents can give to their children is unconditional love, right? Not, "I don't love
Yeah.
you because you got good marks, because you stood first in this election, because you did good in drama, or you got this. I love you just because you are." And I'm sure that might have given you like a dose of energy
Yeah.
to explore these very profound and important questions about life, like who am I? So moving on to the next question, I'm really fascinated. How did you meet Leonard Orr and sort of get introduced to the
Hmm.
rebirthing movement? When did that happen?
Yeah. I came out of the military in 1976. I'm a Vietnam era veteran. I was in from 1970 to 1976. I was a deep sea diver. I was mixing gases. I was doing underwater rescue. I had the Navy's breath holding champion record at the time. I was into breathing, just because of the work I did and free diving and so on. They didn't even call it free diving at the time. We just called it, well, we were doing coral diving, pearl diving, breath holding. Um, and when I got out of the military, I had 10 years of veterans benefits, educational benefits. So I decided to live in the university in Massachusetts. And everybody knew I was into breathing because you can't be with me for more than 5 minutes before I bring up the subject. And so I had an awakening experience in Hawaii through Ken Kai's The Handbook to Higher Consciousness, the Living Love Way. He was down in Kentucky, and then they moved their center to Coos Bay, Oregon. It's still there, the Living Love Center. Beautiful teacher. And his book, The Handbook to Higher Consciousness, fell on my lap, boom, hit me in the face just at the time I was leaving the military, and I needed to just vent and decompress and find my sea legs again after 5 years in the military. So I took a year off. I was living on the beach in Hawaii, and I encountered this book, and it just changed. He took all of the Eastern teachings. Ken Kai's took all of the Eastern teachings and he put it into Western language. And I don't know, I just got something from him. And so then when my year of retreat after the military was up, I was in Hawaii. I went back to Massachusetts, my home, and I enrolled in University of Massachusetts, and I was looking for which courses to take. And I was in the bookstore, and I saw this book on the shelf, Handbook to Higher Consciousness. And I thought, oh my God, they're using this book in a college course? Who is this teacher? I want him. And his name was Milton Young. He taught transpersonal education, human development, and learning. And he became my mentor. And that year, I met him in the parking lot one morning on the way to class, and he was literally giddy. He was like floating. He was like, woo, woo. And I'm going, Milt, you look a little weird today. What happened? He says, oh, I was just rebirthed. He said, it's about breathing. You'll probably like it. And so I said, yeah, what is it? He says, yeah, you breathe in this way. And it's like, whoa, it's fantastic. I goes, oh, I'm in. He said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, learn it, write a paper for me on it, and I'll give you 6 credits. And at the time, 6 credits, that's half of a full-time semester. Right. And I needed to have 12 credits each semester so I could use up my VA benefits. And I already had 6 credits without even having to do anything but breathe. And so I was in. And so I went to this woman named Annabelle Booton. She had very thick glasses, Coca-Cola glasses. She smoked, and she's teaching breathing. I'm thinking, well, this is one weird lady. I wouldn't pay for this, but I'm here to learn. Well, when she finally got me breathing, I mean, within the first 15 minutes, all the tension from 5 years in the military just melted off me in this electrical, vibrational experience. And I felt so clean and so clear and so bright and so free. And so I said, well, wow, who taught you this? She goes, oh, Pam Pepper. I said, all right, give me her number. I'm going to her. So she lived in Boston. I had a session with Pam Pepper, a very similar experience of the rebirthing method. I was double sold. I said, okay, where did you learn this? And she said, oh, Sandra Ray. I went and studied with Sandra Ray, and I heard about Leonard Orr, and then I ended up with Leonard Orr. And I was with him. He passed away last year, but we were in a constant relationship for 40 years from the day I met him. He was the father of the modern breathwork movement, rebirthing breathwork. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up with Leonard, through my college mentor professor.
So I love that story. Your college professor, you saw him joyful, blissful, radiant, vibrating, and you're like, what did you do, right? So my question to you is, how does conscious breathing, how does it affect our body? Like, break it down for us. What's happening there?
Well, when you get a handle on your breath, first of all, you're getting a handle on your consciousness. You're regulating your mind. It's a mindfulness practice. It's a meditative. It triggers in us a kind of meditative awareness, you could say. Yeah. And so when we breathe, we're getting a handle on our consciousness, and we're getting a handle on our energy. And if you're controlling your consciousness and your energy, you're in a creative position. You're in you're in the flow of something. You have just connected with the 2 most precious things about us: our life force energy and our awareness, our consciousness. And so breathing is a way that I can heal my body by using my breath and my mind. I can heal my mind by using my breath and my body. I can heal my emotions by using my mind and my breath and my body. And so I discovered that the breath is this piece that links the mind and the body and the emotions. and it connects me to the source within myself. It connects me to this ocean around me. We're all sucking off the same bubble of air. It's not just a cliche. It's not just a pretty idea. We're all connected. The breath literally connects us to our source, and it connects us to each other. And so it connects my mind to my body. It connects my subconscious mind to my conscious mind. And so it connects the circulation of my blood to the circulation of prana. It's the key link in the spiritual path and in the process of awakening. And it's right under our nose. And so, of course, it's the simplest things are the most powerful. And I don't know why people are so surprised that when you play with your breath, all kinds of things happen. Duh, you're playing with spirit. You are in a creative, co-creative relationship with the creator of life. And so, of course, miracles are going to happen. If that's your intention, if you're ready, if you're willing, then miracles are going to happen.
So there you go, Action Tribe. We are learning that when you mix your awareness with your breathing, with your body, then a lot of things can happen, because you're literally affecting not just your physiology, you relax your body, but also, like we're going to get into in a bit, you can have these wonderful, blissful, spiritual experiences. Now, Dan, I'm curious.
Yeah, well, because see, the thing
Right.
is that, and one more thing, that
Yeah.
breath work awakens heart intelligence. It's no accident that the lungs are wrapped around the heart. And as you're breathing, you're beginning to do something with your heart energy. And breathing awakens body intelligence. You know, you embody yourself. You breathe down into your belly and you come fully into your body. So breathing awakens body intelligence. It awakens heart intelligence, and it awakens mind intelligence. So that's the key. That's why it's so powerful.
Absolutely. Very truly put. Once we're able to bring our awareness to actually breathe, using our diaphragm and our belly, something special happens all throughout our body. You can't help but secrete these feel good, happy chemicals that make us feel like, we're in a bliss state, connected and joyous
Yeah.
beyond measure.
Yeah.
But then, how did you end up learning Prana Yoga? What's the story like?
Well, when I was learning rebirthing, Leonard Orr said that the source of rebirthing was Babaji, Harakan Baba. He's written about an autobiography of a yogi. He's an immortal yogi, Christ of India. He materialized a body in 1980. I'm sorry, in 1970, in Harakan at the foot of Mount Kailash. And so he was the inspiration. He was Leonard's inspiration for rebirthing. He felt that Babaji was the source of rebirthing. And if you wanted to get certified, you should need to go to India and meet Babaji. It was required for certification. And when I met Babaji, I met my guardian angel. I was immediately taken back to that day in kindergarten when the priest had told me about the breath of life and breathing. And the nun said, we all have a guardian angel, somebody who's assigned to you to help you through your life and guide you. And so as a little child, when I sat down in the cafeteria, I left a little place on the side of me for my guardian angel. When I was sitting at my desk in class, I had a little place on my chair for my guardian angel. I mean, this was a real thing, a little kid's imagination. I believed all this stuff, and I was living it. And so the first day I spent with Babaji, he came running around. I climb up the stairs to the ashram. We had to hike miles through the jungle and airplanes and trains and taxis and finally hiking. And then you climb up all these 108 stairs to the ashram. And I sit down. And Babaji came running out of his room. He came and he sat right on the side of me and he went, hee, and something happened. Wow. And there I was sitting in the presence of the source of yoga. and how can you not become a yogi? I don't know. And so,
Mm.
and then I just, traveling through India, reading, studying, breathing down the neck of anybody who knew anything about breathing, or kissing the feet of anybody who knew anything about breathing. And breathing became my yoga. And yoga is breathing. Breathing is yoga. And it's ancient. It's new in the West. It's like a reawakening of
Right.
ancient science happening in the world right now. It's beautiful. It's powerful. But I'm really blessed and honored to be actually part of a lineage. What an amazing blessing, So
That's actually fascinating that you shared that, because I had once interviewed a yogi sometime last year, and he mentioned that when you have a guru in your life, somebody that deep down you consider somebody that you want to learn from, that person might either come in person when you're a kid, or might send some message, but you're not quite ready at that age, and then when you're ready, the person manifests. So it seems like the same thing happened in your case. uh,
yeah.
but yeah, what a wonderful story. Thanks a lot for sharing. I did not know this, but
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing this in person with graphic detail. uh, so what influence did India have on you as a person? How did India shape you as a person after that?
Well, um, in the first one of our first meetings, uh, the ashram life is really, really. I have very little tolerance for devotees. I mean, there are a lot of gurus and masters that I love, but it's really being around the devotees sometimes very trying for me. I have very little patience. I don't know what it is. Um, but one of the first meetings we had, Babaji would had a swing he used to sit on when we would all gather around, and he had a fan on the end of a stick,
Mm.
and his devotees, who are oh so spiritual and oh so serious and oh so whatever,
Yeah.
following all the ashram rules and doing everything right, and doing their arti and doing their prayers and all that karma yoga. And then when they saw Babaji going towards a swing, they literally elbowed each other and trampled over each other to
Right.
get to the fan. Because if they
Mm.
could get to the fan, they could stand next to him and fan him. And so, anyway, and so a group had arrived, and Babaji was going around asking questions, and he was asking, yeah, what do you do? Where do you come from? What kind of work do you do? Oh, and there was a girl, Zuni, who was a rebirther. She was in my group. We traveled to India together. She was so proud of doing God's work. And so he asked her, he says, so what do you do? She says, oh, I do rebirthing. He goes, rebirthing? Fuck rebirthing. There are people who are starving. You should be feeding people. There are people who don't have any clothes. You should be giving them clothes. They don't have a place to live. You should be giving them a place to live. Rebirthing. It was like, oh, she was crushed. She was totally devastated.
Mm.
And then the next person he turned to was me, and he said, and what do you do? I go, I'm a rebirther. He goes, oh, very good work. You should rebirth him. You should rebirth her. You should rebirth him. And so, um, and so I don't know. It was part of I got caught in his leela, in his game,
Yeah.
and sometimes he'd come out of his room and he looked like a woman. Sometimes he was like a child. Sometimes he was like a woman. You never knew who you were going to be with that day. He was just this unbelievable presence. You couldn't wrap your mind around him.
Mm.
And then one day he tapped me in the belly. Leonard Orr, who he had given the name Makan Singh, Babaji gave me the name Gucharam Singh.
Mm.
And so anyway, say Makan Singh is on his way. I said, oh, really? Yeah. He just knew that Leonard was coming. So he said, go meet him. And he tapped me on the belly with the back of his hand. He tapped me on the belly.
Mm.
And when he tapped me on the belly, I felt this slow motion lightning. I don't know how, and instead of a flash of lightning, it was kind of a gradual strike of lightning. I don't even know how to talk about it, but it started in my danshen. It started where he tapped me. It spread like tentacles, like electrical tentacles to my whole body until
Right.
I was buzzing and tingling. I was like floating, and I started to run through the jungle to meet Leonard Orr. And along the way, I was having these visions. I felt I had so much power. I had
Mm.
so much energy. And I started like a child thinking, when I meet him on the path, I think I'm going to pick him up and I'm going to carry him back to the ashram. And so, just like imagining fantasy thing.
Yeah.
Well, when I met him on the path, he had a group of 4 or 5 people. And one of them was this woman, Vera, from Michigan in the United States. And she had this arthritic condition and she couldn't walk anymore. She was just sitting there and they were all sitting around wondering what to do because she just couldn't walk anymore. And I was already running. I had been running the whole time. I just circled around the rock running. I picked her up and I started running back to the ashram. It was just like this
Wow.
perfect synchronicity thing of my fantasy, what needed to happen, and my mission and my purpose in that moment. And so I realized Babaji taught me that we need to tune into the energy of the moment. And if
Oh.
we can get around our thoughts and get around our plans and get around our intentions and have this practice of opening to the energy of the moment so that we're available for who we need to be in the moment and what needs to happen and where we need to go and what decisions we need to make.
Yeah.
And so Babaji taught me that I don't have to worry about that stuff. I don't need to worry about knowing what I'll do if.
Mm.
And we waste a lot of energy by trying to know things before we need to know them. And now I know that if I don't know something, it's because I don't need to know it. But if I do need to know it, I will know it in that moment. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And so it was a liberating experience that at once gave me this tremendous power and freedom. And at the same time, this ability to just go, nothing to do anyway. We can
Yeah.
just enjoy and flow and love life, and things will work out perfectly.
There you go, Action Tribe. Things will work out perfectly if you're able to, you know, press pause and be in the present moment. And speaking of being in the moment, what is the significance of holding your breath? Because you've written about that
Hmm.
in your wonderful book,
Yeah,
Just Breathe. Uh,
yeah.
but what does it do for you, holding your breath?
Well, there's 2 kinds of breath holding. There's very conscious, intentional breath holding. And I wouldn't call it holding. I would call it an open pause.
An
I
open pause.
practice a lot of breath holding. Well, what a lot of people do is that when they hold their breath, they lock up their system. That's a
Okay.
different thing than if the breath is paused and it's an open pause. There's no forces pushing and pulling on you. You're not doing anything. You're not
Mm.
trying to control everything. I mean, I tell people, if you got to be honest, your average yogi is a control freak. They want to control every joint, every muscle, every organ. They want to control the stars. They want to control their destiny. They want to control their breath. They want to control everything. They're
Mm.
control freaks.
Right.
And but this ability or this willingness, let's say, to be guided by something is much more important than the doing. I'm sorry, I went off your question. You want to repeat it again?
Oh no, along the same lines, my only question was what is the significance of
Breath holding.
yeah.
Yes, thank you. Well, if I'm trying to remember something, without even thinking, I unconsciously hold my breath. It creates a moment of stillness and silence where maybe I can hear something or see
Mm.
something.
Mm.
But as the breath is moving and so we intuitively or unconsciously hold our breath in different moments. That
Mm.
could be useful, and it could not be, right? So chronic breath holding is a really serious physiological, emotional, psychological problem.
Mm.
Unconscious repeated breath holding. That's, if there's good and bad, that's bad, right? But when you consciously pause the breath, you sink into a certain stillness, a certain silence, a certain spaciousness, especially if you're relaxed while the breath is paused. And that's the thing about, if I'm holding my breath and I'm fighting off the feelings and I'm not relaxed.
Right.
Maybe it's useful. I don't know. But the combination of the pause and the breath, bright awareness and relaxation, that opens us up to a space. And you can hold your breath in when it's full, You can hold your breath in when it's empty. You can hold your breath in halfway.
Hmm.
And so, hey, breath holding is a science, and it's well worth experimenting with. But before I would practice breath holding, I would practice surrendering to the flow of breath first.
Hmm.
I would surrender to the breath before I start trying to control it, manipulate it, and manage it. I would get to know it. I would become intimately involved, intimately related before I start to manipulate and control and direct. It's like a relationship. On a first date, you don't make the person start doing tricks
No.
for you, and you don't make them do stuff. And so when we start our relationship with the breath, why would you start that way? Making yourself hold it, making yourself push it and pull it. No, you get to know it. You develop a relationship to it. And then together, the breath begins to move through you and act through you, and it begins to guide you. And so breath holding is a big part of breathwork practice, not in the early stages, because in the early stages, you want the breath to be in charge. You don't want to be in charge of something that knows more than you, that's
Hmm.
bigger than you and more powerful than you. You want to surrender to that. And then you want to play with it. Then you want to dance with it. And then you want to begin to direct and control it in a kind of cooperative way, let's say. So I conspire with the breath to breathe. And I allow the breath to breathe me. I breathe the breath. I go back and forth between those two, and something comes together in me. And that's breath work.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, obviously, you've worked with Tony Robbins. You've worked on
Mhm.
sessions of breath work with him, and he's written extensively about you, about the fact that you are committed to mastery and you are a master in this space. But my question is, how did you meet Tony Robbins? When and how did that
Yeah.
miraculous interaction happen?
Yeah. Well, I literally physically bumped into him
Oh,
at a whole health festival or spirit mind body festival. I think what that was called back in 1980 in
okay.
Boston at the Park Plaza Hotel. I think it was called the Whole Earth Festival or the Mind Body Spirit Festival, one of those. He
Hmm.
had a booth. He was doing his fire walking. I had a booth. I had my rebirthing booth, and I saw him walking. You know, he's very tall, and the first thing I noticed, he had really huge feet. The guy
Yeah.
has gigantic big feet, right? And so I happened to be looking down at his feet, and Tony Robbins at the time, and still, he's somebody who was looking ahead at the future. I mean,
Yeah.
his head was held high. It looked like he was looking off into the future.
Yeah.
And I was looking down at his feet, and we literally bumped into each other.
Okay.
And that's how I first met him.
Hmm.
And then I saw that he had his firewalk outside on the sidewalk in downtown Boston. There was about 150 people. I didn't do his seminar. I just jumped in the line. I snuck in. I jumped in the line and I walked on fire with him.
Yeah.
And then many years, and then I did his, I bought his cassette program, Unlimited Power, and all of his stuff. I just read his things. I love his work. Um, and then a few years ago, I was with my friend Mark Devine at the SEAL Fit Training Center, and I met his son, Jarek.
Hmm.
He was training with Mark Devine, and we got introduced, and so I met Jarek first. And at the time, I was a representative for the O2 chair.
Hmm.
It was like a breathing chair. We introduced it at uh, the big tech conference in Las Vegas. And so I was like a spokesperson for that. And he had heard about that breathing chair, $10,000, and you get this chair and it moves
Right.
you, and you get a voice you can listen to. It tells you when to breathe in and stuff. And he said, "Hey, my dad loves these big toys and stuff. I want to get him one for Christmas." So that's
Right.
how I met Jarek.
Oh,
And so a few days later, I got a call from Tony. And it's one of those moments where I pick up my phone. Yeah, hello. He goes, "Hey, this is Dan." I go, "Yeah, this is Tony Robbins." I go, "Come on, get the fuck out of here. Who is this? Is this Bob?" Is this Bill? Come on, who is this?
Yeah.
Come on, Tony Robbins, right? He goes, no, this is Tony. I said, well, shit, I am thrilled to like talk to you, Tony.
Mm.
And he says, yeah, I've heard about you. You've been doing something for 40 years. I want to pick your brain. I know breathing is important. Can we get together? Can we meet? And we've been friends ever since. Yeah.
Wow. What a story. One thing led to the other. And I used to listen to Tony Robbins tapes a lot. And he always is like, if you want to get good at something, find who's doing it the best, find the master, and pick his or her brains. And don't try to reinvent the wheel.
He
So
practices what he preaches.
he
That's
does,
one
right?
thing I love about him. He practices what he preaches. He walks his
Right.
talk. He's 100% on or not at all.
Wow.
And if he learns something, he
Right.
has to teach it to somebody else immediately. And he literally did that. I mean, I was working him at his house in West Palm Beach. We played with this little diaphragmatic breathing thing. And as soon as he got it, he called in his personal assistant and made her lay down and learn it. It's like he cannot keep valuable information to himself. He's a saint in a suit. And you and 50 million other people have been affected by his work. And
For sure. For
that's
sure.
that's extraordinary. I
Yeah.
love serving people like that because he's already into breathing. He's very conscious. He's done a lot of work on himself.
Mhm.
And when I breathe with somebody like that, a little adjustment, you can parlay that into a huge advantage. And so I love working with him and
Yep.
people like him who really, they're making a difference in the world, and we need to
Mhm.
be serving those people.
Yeah. And speaking about little adjustment, I just wanted to mention that you've been like a huge influence in my life as well. I remember through the interviews that we did, like if you remember, it was not video last time, it was audio. And I could hear you breathing
Yes.
deeply in and out. And I was wondering, uh, so this guest is not just speaking, but really living the breathing. And that sort of sank deep in my subconscious mind. And I was like, I'm going to do breath work and pursue it at a deeper level someday. But thanks a lot for, placing that seed in my life. So, exactly, exactly. Now, Dan, Tony, in the forward that he wrote for your book over here, he writes that 70% of the toxins inside our bodies are removed through our lungs. And you write extensively about how breathwork can help remove these harmful toxins, right, that get collected throughout the day in our
Mhm.
bodies. And I think people listening to this episode also deep down can feel the presence of certain toxins that need to be cleared from their aura, from their bodies. So, firstly, if you can give us an overview of what are some of these toxins that we attract into our body, and then how can breathwork help us clear them out or cleanse them out, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, in the first place, the energy in the breath, the prana, the spirit, the chi, the ki, whatever you want to call it, that energy is more powerful than any of the pollutants or toxins that we might breathe in.
Mm.
I mean, I think first we have to be really grounded in certainty about that. That this energy, this life force that I am appropriating when I breathe, it's stronger than any of the toxins or pollutants. So we don't have to be afraid about breathing. Um, I mean, something happens when we tune into our breath. When we let go of the surface, when we let go of the circumference, when we drop down,
Mm.
when we move toward our center. So I use my exhale to drop down into that center in me. And then when I breathe in, I invite some of that energy from my source to come up to the surface and come out and express.
Mm.
So, using the breath to connect to our spirit. And beyond that, what is there to do? What is there to know? Who do you need? What's the problem? And so if we can accomplish that, we've done all we need to do.
Right.
And there are many ways to play with your breath so that you you get it, you catch it. And once people catch it, then they don't need me anymore. They don't need you. They don't need any books.
Yeah.
Then everything is just like frosting on the cake.
Right.
Then everything is just helping. You don't need it. You like it. You enjoy it. You
Mm.
want it, but you don't need it because now you know you've got everything you need. And when we connect to our breath, we connect to infinite intelligence, infinite manifestation, infinite being. And if you are connected to that,
Mm.
what more do we need? What was your
Amazing,
question?
amazing.
Sorry.
We were both zoned into a space. I've forgotten the question, and uh, but yeah. So my question was just about the toxins part of it. But you said that
Thank you. Yeah,
clearing the
well, if you, first of all, relaxation is really important. We
yeah,
have toxins trapped in our system.
mm,
I've done breathing sessions with people who had surgery 20 years before, and when they
right,
were breathing, you could smell the anesthesia,
right,
literally smell the anesthesia. And so there are toxins locked in our body, and movement and stretching and breathing frees up all that stuff.
mm,
And so breath work is a detoxing practice, really, right? It's energizing, it's relaxing, and
mm,
it's detoxing. And then there is more, let's call them emotional pollution. Leonard Orr talked a lot about emotional energy pollution
mm,
and how we're always picking up other people's energy. I'm
yep,
picking up your thoughts, your feelings, your fears, your pain, your illnesses, your aspirations. We're all connected, and so we're catching this stuff from each other. We're absorbing other people's energy, and so we need a process to clean and balance our energy body in the
hmm,
same way that every day you take a shower, you take a bath, you nourish your physical body with food.
yep,
Every day you have to breathe to clean and balance and nourish your energy body and keep it
right,
pure and throw off all of this energy that we're absorbing. I go out in the world and I pick up all the dirt and the dust out in the world. I come home, I take a shower. I go out in
yeah,
the world, I pick up all the emotional energy and the fears and the thoughts of other people. I come home, I breathe, and I take a shower.
yeah,
And so it's a real thing, and we need to be using breath work to keep ourselves clean and
mm,
on an emotional level, on an energetic level, and on the level of just pure, physical toxins. And breath work is a powerful way to do that cleaning.
wonderful. I love that. So, Action Tribe, it's about time to take a breathing shower, a breathe bath, so to speak. But Dan, moving from one personality like Tony Robbins to Wim Hof, how are people like Wim Hof able to use their breath along with other techniques to withstand extreme cold, ice baths, and heat, and even bacteria to boost their immunity and really protect themselves? Yeah, what's happening inside the body?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's a biohacker. He's an
Yep.
extreme athlete. You bury him in ice for 2 hours and he raises his core temperature 1 degree. Inject him with endotoxins. He has no immune reaction, no symptoms, and he can teach anybody else to do that. Anybody can learn to do that. But what's required? Mindset. You got to believe you can do this stuff. As he
Yeah.
says, man, you got to believe you can do this shit, and you
Yeah.
do. If you don't believe you can do it, don't bother doing it. You've got to be certain that you really have this ability,
Mm.
and that helps awaken the ability when you have faith in your own ability and you really
Yeah.
believe that you can heal yourself, that you
Yep.
can overcome these stuff because we can. So that powerful mindset is the first piece. The second piece is breathing for him. And the third piece for him in Wim Hof's method is the gradual exposure to cold. And
Yep.
then what do? You just keep going in there further and further and further and see what limits you can overcome. He's a wild man. he's, rah, rah, breathe, motherfucker, rah.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's a little too much for some people.
yeah,
The fitness crowd and the peak performance
yeah.
guys and they're really into him.
Right.
But the subtler, gentler women and others softer, they kind of go, yeah, this is a little too whatever for me. And,
Yeah.
but it's one example of breath work and the power of breath work, combining breath work with consciousness and intention and, movement and body oriented practices, stretching while you're in cold weather, cold water, relaxing into the cold. And his method is ancient. It's not new. It's hyperventilation, breath holding, hyperventilation, breath holding. He doesn't call it hyperventilation, but it is.
Mm.
And so when you hyperventilate, you produce a whole package of feelings and sensations and emotions and reactions in your body. And if you can relax into them, if you can breathe and be with them, you heal something, you grow. When you hold your breath, you create another different package of feelings and sensations and reactions in the body. And if you can relax into those, you heal something, you grow. So his method is ancient no-brainer. Hyperventilate, breath hold, hyperventilate, breath hold, and just practice getting comfortable with those extremes. And in the process of that, you're going to open and expand your human potential. It's guaranteed. You don't need a teacher. He's got a great method, but there are 1,000 Wim Hofs out there that people will never hear about. And their exercise, their techniques are just as powerful. And so, hey, we find our own way by connecting with as many other people as possible, putting together things from different schools and creating your own unique path. And Wim Hof's technique is definitely worth learning, practicing, and mastering. I love the guy. Yeah.
Wonderful. The cold exposure has definitely helped me. I mean, I do my morning cold showers that he speaks about and is wonderfully articulated in your book as well. I spend about a minute or so in the cold. And I feel this urge, this need to push beyond my comfort zone. I want to find a place where I can do this ice bath. But whenever I get a chance in the river, maybe I go into the water. It's just so freeing. And once you come out of the cold, it's so liberating. It's like a full body orgasm, so to speak. You're vibrating, you're at higher
Yeah.
frequency. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yes, you're alive. You're giving your body a shock.
Yeah.
So all your resources turn on at the same time and you feel so alive. It's a great training. And it's like firewalking too. It's like the opposite of firewalking, right? It's one of those extreme elements of nature. And the more comfortable we get with the extreme elements of nature, the more human, the more powerful we become. And most people, they hide from those extremes.
Yeah.
They don't want it too warm. They don't want it too cold. And their comfort zone gets more and more narrow. We got to be expanding our comfort zone if you want to grow and stay healthy.
Expand your comfort zone to grow and be healthy and to connect with nature. We're exploring some really awesome themes in today's episode. Now, Dan, I get messages from time to time from people who've done breath work with me and they feel energized and they feel blissed out after that, like you've sort of alluded to. Yesterday, somebody told me that the breath work is helping her slowly let go of smoking. And I know that you write about alleviation of anxiety symptoms from addiction as well. So how does breathwork help with overcoming addictions? What's happening in there?
Hey, well, smoking is a substitute for inner fire. When you some deep part of us wants that fire because it's an element of our nature, and we're just going at it in not probably the best way. And when you smoke, you can see the breath, you can feel the breath, you consciously inhale, you consciously exhale. It's an excuse to practice breath work. Just skip the cigarette and just play with your breath, see it, feel it, and invite that inner fire to awaken, and it will. And when all addictions are about reactions, right? And so I have an urge to smoke, and I can't smoke because my smoke break isn't for 10 minutes, but it's going to be distracting me until I get my break, and then I'm going to go outside for my smoke break, right? So what happens? I want to smoke, the feelings start to build up inside of me, and they're uncomfortable feelings, really.
Yeah.
And we don't want to feel them. Smoking is a way to suppress feelings. And so when those
Mm.
feelings start to come up again, we want a cigarette to send those feelings back in. So if you could just sit with those feelings, let them come up, tolerate those uncomfortable feelings until they pass, and don't do anything to make them go away. And so addictions are like that. And so what we do is we use breathing to be with our feelings until the power of them kind of we they lose the power over us. We tolerate the feeling, we navigate the feeling with the breath until we've gotten past the crisis. And so everybody's addicted to something, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Very
so
true.
whatever pushes you, whatever pulls you, whatever calls you to say, this is really who I am and how I want to be, you know, nature is calling you. Say, okay, well, change it, do something. And so
Mm.
breathe instead and use your breath to manage those feelings. So the feelings when I want to smoke, they get stronger and stronger and stronger. Then I smoke and the feelings go back down. And that just keeps happening forever
Yeah.
until I either die of lung cancer
Mm.
or I quit, you know? And so if you quit, you're going to force yourself to deal with all those feelings that smoking has been helping you to suppress. And then all you need is a method and a strategy for dealing and navigating those feelings. And breathwork is a perfect way to navigate and tolerate and overcome and master those feelings that push and pull and drive you. So breathwork is a great intervention, prevention, intervention, and recovery tool for addiction. And I've used breathwork in all of those fields. I've used it for addiction prevention, for addiction intervention, for cure, for treatment, and for recovery. And you can apply it anywhere in that spectrum of addiction population.
Thanks a lot for sharing. I think that's really, really useful. So, Action Tribe, it's a good opportunity to look into your own life and try to understand what you might be addicted to. Because, like Dan mentioned, we're all addicted to something or the other. I, for one, I need to limit my usage of Facebook because all these social media companies, right? They literally pay neuroscientists to keep you hooked. So that's another form of addiction. You can be addicted to sugar or food or all these various types. So it's an invitation to think about how you can use your breath to work on the feelings that you might be trying to suppress. Now, Dan, you mentioned a while back that you engage in these practices to sort of connect with nature and experience a more liberated version of being a human being. So, my question is, in addition to breath work, what other practices do you engage in to really tap into that bliss and flow? Or, because you write about so many in your book, but anything can
Yeah.
share.
Now, I'm really a purist when it comes to breath. I mean, I don't do anything else. I'm
Okay.
going to make this work,
Hmm.
regardless of what I eat, regardless of anything else I do. What I know, my mission is to take the power and the potential of breath work toward whatever the maximum is.
Hmm.
And if I put in too many other things and then I get a benefit, I won't know. Did the benefit come from the breathing, or did it come from my exercise or the food I eat or whatever? And I don't want to have to do that. When I'm alive at 105 and I'm thriving, I want people to know it's not because I exercised, it's not because I ate right, it's not because I did this, it's because I mastered my breath.
Hmm.
And that has to be enough for me. But I live here in nature. And so when I'm breathing in the sounds of the birds. I'm
Hmm.
breathing in the desert fragrances, night blooming jasmine. If I'm looking at a sunrise, I'm breathing in the sun. If I'm listening to somebody, I'm breathing in what they're telling me. If I'm touching something, I'm breathing in what I'm feeling. I try to bring my breath into absolutely everything I do and everything that happens.
Hmm.
And um, and every time I have a thought, I hope it reminds me to breathe. Every time I see a bird fly by, I hope it reminds me to breathe. Every time a weird feeling occurs in my body, I hope it reminds me to breathe. And by breathe, I mean awaken, let go, and take charge, and you know, come into life fully in the moment. You know?
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, diving into breath work, I think it's under the spiritual breathing techniques that you mentioned in your book, but you encourage your readers to squeeze their perineum, right? The Mula Bandha, uh,
Mm-hmm.
to
Yep.
enhance the
Pulling up.
effects of breath work. So I just wanted to know, what does that do for you? How does that
Yeah.
maybe?
We have in traditional yoga, we have this concept of bandhis, these energetic locks and so on. And we have a little diaphragm down there over our perineum. We've got a big diaphragm. And then we have another energetic diaphragm in our throat, the big
Mhm.
one in our torso, and then that little one down in the perineal area. And so when we breathe and we pull up on the perineum and we pull in on the belly button, we're creating some very powerful forces down there.
Mm.
And so when we breathe, we want to be playing with those forces, and we want to start to invite energy to rise up, right,
Okay.
from within us. And so we use the breath. We're pulling up on the perineum. We're drawing the breath up through. Hopefully, it comes all the way up and it fountains, showers down around us like a fountain. But
Mm.
that's one area. As we play with breath work, we have different places, call them bands of tension. So we
Hmm.
have this bands of tension in different places in our body. And one of those bands of tension is down around the pelvis, the belly area, sexual organs, and that's a high energy place, right?
Yeah.
Our lower chakras, the first, second, and third chakras down there. And so we want to be activating and waking those up and cleaning and clearing and coming into them and sensing them. And so, yeah, we're starting to use the breath and use the body to start to do things with our energy. And so all those traditional techniques in yoga, they make a lot of sense and they can be tweaked and adjusted, and they can be thought of in some really, say, modern ways, but it's energy work, right? When you're doing breath work, you're doing energy work. You know?
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, when I do these sessions with people or even on my own, after a few rounds, sometimes I might see colors, especially a deep purple in the area of my third eye, and I feel deeply relaxed and connected. So, is there a connection between DMT and breath work? Is the breath work and the breath holding somehow secreting DMT that is helping us achieve these altered states of consciousness? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I'm sure of it. Breath work is like ayahuasca without the drug. It's like LSD
Mm.
without the drug. It's like opium without the drug. It's like we have all these, our body manufactures all this stuff. We just have to turn on the intelligence of the body, and we don't need these external substances. And so, yeah, our brain can manufacture whatever chemicals are required for the moment. And we should be putting more attention and research into that ability and less
Mm.
attention and research into manufacturing synthetic chemicals that really just mimic what our body can already produce. Let's
Mm.
let's instead of spending billions of dollars on pharmaceutical research, let's set the world loose. Let's set a few $1 billion loose on people who want to practice developing inner resources,
For
um,
sure.
but yeah, it's the drug ecstasy and cocaine and pain killing drugs, antidepressant drugs. Our body is capable of manufacturing those drugs if they need it, and we can transcend all those conditions if we really want to. And so it's recreational. I think marijuana, LSD, mushrooms, ayahuasca, all that kind of stuff. It's recreational. It's not required. But for some people,
Right.
it turns something on in them. And then
Mm.
it sets them on a path to, okay, now I know that there's such a state. Now I know that there's such an experience. Now, how can I naturally get to that experience? So I'm not against those drugs.
Yeah.
I certainly did more than my share
Yeah.
of LSD and psychedelics and stuff and mushrooms and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm not against it, but it's fun, it's useful, it's not necessary. Could be
Yeah.
interesting.
Mhm.
Uh,
I love the what you shared. So it's like a frame of reference. You now know where it is. Now, how about finding a way to go to that same place more naturally, using the chemicals without on our own body without any side effects?
Yeah. And we know it. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know how to manufacture chemicals in my brain. I'll admit it. I don't know how to keep my heart beating. I don't know how to digest my food. But
Mm.
some part of me knows that. There's an intelligence in me that's taking care of that. And if I can connect with that intelligence and cooperate with that intelligence,
Mm.
then me and life, me and nature can do a lot together.
And I think that's the vision, right? If we are able to cohabitate and live with nature, get closer to nature, then like the entire industry would transform. We would be more, you know, empathic in our creation of these products that tend to be corrosive and bad for our rainforests, our oceans,
Mhm.
and things like that.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the gifts of breath work. You cannot practice breath work for any amount of time without starting to feel your
Yeah.
connection to the earth, to the oceans, to the rivers, to the stars, to the air. And so you become a natural environmentalist, you become a natural ecologist. And um, because the breath awakens those things in us.
Mm.
So it's the tool of our day. And right now, breath work, even from the last time we talked 2 years ago,
Yeah.
you know, AJ, I bet you 300 books have been written on breathing since
Yeah.
you and I talked 2 years ago. It's
100%.
exploding in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if people aren't on the bandwagon yet, well, they better get their butt moving because uh, it's the Swiss Army knife of life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's meditation for people who can't meditate. It's our connection to our own inner healing power, our inner healer, our
Mm-hmm.
inner guru, our higher self. And so, and all we have to do is practice. I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
if the practice feels good, if you feel buzzing and tingling and joyful and bright, you don't need discipline. You want to practice more. And
Yeah.
so you do, and you grow more.
So Dan, what do you feel is the future of breathwork? Like, what fields do you feel it reaching in the near future? Any, as a former expert in breathwork who's been doing it for so many decades, where do you see it going?
I see more and more styles, more and more schools, more and
Mm.
more methods, more and more approaches. I see that science going deeper and deeper, wearable technologies to moment monitor breath and monitor physiological parameters while you're breathing. That's going to accelerate all of our learning. And I see these ancient spiritual practices being modified or retuned to fit our day, our time, this point in history. I see breath work making its way into the mainstream medical worlds everywhere. It's already in the fitness world, in the elite performance world, in the Olympic athlete world. It's in the psychotherapy world. It's in the bodywork world. It's going to totally permeate the planet. People are going to get more and more conscious of their breathing. They're going to be able to handle pain by themselves. They can charge themselves if they get tired. They can relax themselves if they get tense. It's going to become a natural therapeutic practice that's going to be widely taught under a lot of different names. There's going to be a lot of conflict because people are
Mm.
religious about
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
about diets. People are so religious about different nutritional things. And
Right.
people are going to be religious about breath. Oh, our way is the right way and this way
Mm.
is better. Nah, that's sibling rivalry. We're going to grow out of that.
Mm.
Um, but I see the breath being the thing that really connects us in these days of social distancing. Um, it's
Yeah.
calling us to learn how to connect on deeper levels, and I
Yeah.
think the breath is going to be part of that, allowing people to connect more deeply. I think it's going to be a real force for bringing people together. It's an excuse. When we breathe together, we start to think alike. We start to
Mm.
love each other. We begin to respect and admire each other more. And so I see breath work becoming the new yoga, more popular than yoga in the next few years. And you're going to have people on every end of the spectrum, on the purely scientific,
Yeah.
chemical, biological, and you're going to see people on the other end. It's like just a woo spiritual. Who cares if you can prove it or not?
Yeah.
Mystical, and it's going to bring those two people together, who seem to
That's
be totally opposed. They're going to find out that they're actually quite on the same page.
wonderful, wonderful. So, Action Tribe, especially in this era or this phase where everyone's having to wear a mask, not everyone know this, but there's an opportunity to learn breathwork fundamentals from Dan Brulé himself through an online
Hmm.
course. And because travel, for the most part, is on freeze right now, it makes for a perfect opportunity to sit at home and just breathe. So, Dan, I thought of just recording some questions for those who would like to learn more about the course so that they
Mhm.
can make an informed decision. Is that all right?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool, cool, cool. So maybe the first question is, what made you create this program, the Breath Mastery
Yeah.
Fundamentals?
Well, like many things in my personal life, a lot of beautiful things happen by themselves. I was in Australia a couple of years ago. My Australian team of organizers, they hired a video crew, came in, they recorded like 100 hours of my seminars and talks and trainings all around Australia. Then they went through, they cut out little clips, they edited it. We created a manual to go with it, and we launched this course called O2 Fundamentals. So people paid $4,000 or $5,000 for that training I did in Australia, and now they get the benefit through the videos and the manual and the transcripts, that they can get that same course online sitting at home. So I'm really grateful to my team in Australia, who took all the content and shaped and formed it. And um, and so yeah, I invite people. It's a self-paced thing. You go at your own pace. We have a Facebook group where you can chat with other people taking the course, post questions, meet like-minded people. Yeah, it's called our O2 Fundamentals course, and it's built on this O2 Collective platform, which is my Australian partner breathing program there.
Wonderful. Now I know it's online, but what can somebody expect to learn after enrolling? I mean, maybe some highlights or something.
Yeah, well, I basically tried to compress 40 years
Wow.
of study and practice into, into a short course, which, touches on all the main points. And it's about the fundamentals of breath work, because I'm big on fundamentals. Even the greatest violinist in the world practices the scales before they perform. And so returning to the basics, I think, is one of the keys to excellence, to mastery. And so that's what you're going to have, is a really good handle on the fundamentals of breath work. And there are a few of them, and you learn them and you put them together in your own way
Hmm.
to suit your path, your style, your needs. But you'll have a good grasp of the fundamentals of breath work that you can then put together and build on. And we have an advanced part of that course. So there's the basic and the advanced, where
Okay.
we go into some very cool stuff, shamanic breath work, and different advanced breathwork practices. So it gives you a taste of the advanced stuff. It gives you a good, broad foundation for building your own practice, whether you're a beginner or you already have graduated several schools of breathing. You will definitely, you'll have different exercises, different ideas, different approaches, and you'll be able to deepen your practice, broaden your practice. And if you're new, we're going to shorten your learning curve. You'll go really far, really fast, because why reinvent the wheel? Some of us have been doing this forever.
Hmm.
And so anything I can do to help people learn faster, that's what this course is about. And to make sure that you don't have any bad habits to begin with. Because when I learned how to play the guitar, I taught myself. And then when I went to try to take guitar lessons, I learned that I was holding the guitar completely wrong. And I
Right.
had to change the way I was holding the guitar. And it was so uncomfortable. I didn't take guitar lessons because I couldn't have fun anymore.
Mm.
And so I wanted to make sure that if you're going to practice breath work, you don't develop any bad habits that are going to hold you back a year
Right.
from now, or you're going to have to unlearn before you can go further at some point. So
Mhm.
that's my mission with this course, to give you as much as I can from all of my years, to sort of crunch it down to main important points, and speed up your learning curve. That's it.
Well, thanks for sharing. Now, as you shared this, I can imagine some people saying, "Dan, that sounds amazing, and I do want to learn from you, but I don't have the time. You see, I'm doing a 9 to 5. I've got kids. I've got other stuff going on. So, what's like the time commitment for this course?"
I think the longest video might be 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. I should check. So we're not talking about a lot of time. The manual, it's sort of a transcript of what's on the videos. You can read that anywhere. It's an audio file. You can listen while you're driving. You can download a lesson, watch it whenever you want. There's no excuse. If I do in the course, I tell people my practice formula is 10 plus 10 plus 10 times 2. You got to practice 10 minutes in the morning. You got to practice 10 minutes at night. And if you really want to master it, you got to practice 10 times during the day for 2 minutes. That's a serious practice. And for people who can't imagine that, then 5 minutes 3 times a day. And if you can't manage 5 minutes 3 times a day, you're not interested. Don't bother.
Perfect. So, thanks a lot for sharing about this course, Action Tribe. If you are fascinated, you loved the interview, and you love Dan's voice and his aura and his way of breathing, and you want to learn from him, this is an opportunity. Go to my7chakras.com/breathe with Dan. That's my
Ah,
seven is a word, my7chakras.com/breathe with Dan, and you'll be able to enroll. Dan, thank you so much. Action Tribe, I hope you enjoyed today's session. The truth is that our breath is both voluntary and involuntary. If we let our surroundings determine how we breathe, then we might feel like things are out of our control, because a lot of things are out of our control. But the beauty about being human is that we're able to voluntarily take control of our breathing and really breathe consciously. And when we do so, we can optimize our life and we can literally live longer. Because just as it is written in the ancient texts of yoga, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it says, when the breath wanders, the mind also is unsteady. But when the breath is calmed, the mind too will be still, and the yogi achieves long life. Therefore, one should learn to control the breath. And with that being said, we are at the very last round for today, the wisdom round, so that our listeners can take note and take action. So, Dan, it's been 2 years since we did this interview, but uh, based on today, what is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
just begin to notice your breath. Just take a moment and just, how does it feel to breathe? How do you know you're breathing? What how do you breathe? What moves? What are the feelings? What are the sensations? What are the internal sounds? Just begin to pay attention to your breath as a practice in the morning when you wake up. You don't have to breathe in any special way. Just start to pay more attention to your breathing when you're stuck in traffic, when you're uncomfortable, when you're having an orgasm, when you're washing dishes. Just develop the habit of tuning into your breath, and your breath will meet you. Your breath will begin to guide you.
If you could turn back time and spend 1 hour with someone who's living or dead, who would it be?
Nelson Mandela. I just wanted to meet that man so much my whole life. How can a guy be in prison for 25 years and have no resentment, no animosity, no anger, no negative feelings towards his captors, his prisoners? That that's a lesson we all need to learn. What a beautiful man. Um, I wish I could have breathed with him. Yeah.
So the quote in my very last episode was about Nelson Mandela itself. The beauty of life is in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. So it's like a synchronicity over here. Uh, but yeah, so profound. What is it one thing you do in the morning or in the evening before sleeping that has improved the quality of your life?
I wake up,
Mhm.
I let go, and I breathe. So as soon as I'm conscious, I become conscious that I'm conscious. And then I direct my consciousness to my breath. And I physically relax and I open. And then I do whatever's next. Maybe I'll play with my breath. Maybe I begin to want to stretch and move. Maybe I want to sing. Maybe I want to run. Maybe I want to make love. I don't know.
Mhm.
But from there on in, I'm in the flow and it doesn't matter.
Wonderful. And what is that one book you'd like to recommend to all of our listeners today?
Actually, a recent book I read. Well, I read three books recently. One is Caesar's Last Breath, which is just brilliant. What a great writer. James Nestor's book, The Lost Art of Breathing, Breathing, the Lost Science. I forget the subtitle, but James Nestor's book, Breathe. And one of my students, Richie Bostock, the breath guy, just wrote a book called Exhale. It's freaking brilliant.
Oh,
So those three books just in the last week have gotten my attention.
wonderful. So we'll have all these links up in the show notes, and especially Action Tribe if you would like to get Dan's amazing book, Just Breathe. It's a compendium, it's an encyclopedia. It has so many different techniques that Dan is very wonderfully shared based on his experience of decades and decades of learning breathwork. Make sure you get that for free because Audible is offering all our listeners one free Audible download with a 30-day trial. So, in case you want to check out the book and listen to it, go to my7chakras.com/free book, my7chakras.com/free book, and start listening. So, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. All of our interactions is like a digital upgrade for me, like a spiritual upgrade, not a digital upgrade, but a spiritual upgrade for me. So I appreciate you taking your time to connect with me today. Before you go, tell us one thing that you're grateful for and the best way that all of our listeners can find you and learn more about you.
Wow, today I am just so grateful that I can feel. What a miracle that we can feel anything, even pain.
Mhm.
I mean, the fact that we can feel pain, just the fact that we can feel.
Yeah.
Wow,
Mm.
what a what a what a miracle. So grateful for being able to just feel. Hmm.
Yeah. And how do we learn more about you? How?
Thank you. Yeah, breathmastery.com and on Facebook, Dan Brulé Breath Mastery. I'm on Instagram at Dan Brulé Official. And look for me in the breath because I am constantly practicing merging with the breath and with the intelligence of life, with the breath of life. Mm.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll have all these notes, all these links up in the show notes on Action Tribe. If you want to start learning with Dan, learning the breathwork fundamentals, go to my7chakras.com/breathe with Dan. Breathe with Dan. If you're on Instagram, then take a screenshot of this episode and tag me and Dan. My handle is at my7chakras, at my7chakras, and Dan's is Dan Brulé Official. I love the handle, Dan Brulé Official, so that we can share your story with our communities. Yeah, and if you have any feedback, questions, or observations, just email me, AJ at my7chakras.com, AJ at my7chakras.com. Dan, thank you so much for coming on our show, talking to us about literally the power of our breath and taking us one step closer to a human revolution.
Thank you, AJ. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Be well.
you.
Mhm.